Welcome back. My name is Jacob McDonald. I am Anything Lacrosse, and this is a game that never sits still. On today's episode, we have another great guest. Lucas Argier from Lacrosse Classified has decided to join us in the podcast. Super excited to have him. Super knowledgeable guy, and I've learned a lot just from listening to him. I want to mention the jersey contest that I'm giving away right now. So all you have to do is join the Discord. Go to my name, my bios there. It's all in there. So if you want, DM me if you can't find it. I'll get right back to you as soon as I can. Discord, X, TikTok, YouTube, wherever. Even comment, I'll throw it in here. Spotify, anywhere on that. Just send me a message on whatever, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But basically, jersey contest is just everybody, anybody in the Discord automatically gets entry. Anybody who tags you in the Discord also gives you a bonus entry. You want to get as many people in there as you can. The more people you get in there, the more chances you get. And really, I think there's only around 100 ballots in there right now, so there's still lots of time. This contest will close the first face-off of the opening season, so November 28th, when Oshawa and Toronto take the first face-off. That's the end of that. That's the closing contest, and I'll do it probably right after that game or after that night of games. We'll just I'll do it on a live, either on TikTok or something like that, and post it in my Discord. Kind of. Another thing I want to announce right now is this week I'll be announcing the details of the season-long fantasy league. Now I've got quite a few guys in there that are interested, so I just want to get finalized numbers right here. I'm going to be announcing the rules in there or whatever. Essentially somewhat of a structure. What I'll do is I'll see how many people are actually full-time interested, and then we'll make a league from there. What's going to happen is you're going to have an X amount of players. They're going to get you so many points every week, and then the winner will take whatever. We'll do a prize. We might do whatever. We'll see what happens once I get as many people in there and see what they want to do. That's going to be up to them at that point, or up to the group as a good choice. I might just do a prize. We'll see what happens. We'll talk about that when we get there. But basically, it's going to be, a season long. You're going to pick your players. You're going to run with them. You're going to have so many games a year that you can put them into, and they're going to have available. And I'm going to see how this works out because I don't think there's anything like this in lacrosse. So I think there's a need for it. Just to recap, Lucas Argier interview to this podcast, the jersey contest, get involved in Discord, and the fantasy league is coming. So 3 exciting things coming. I've always got something cooking. Let's get right into the weekend, okay? So we've prepped preseason action. First off, I would like to start by thanking the league for getting a couple games on the NLL Plus. So that was awesome. And I know that this has a lot to do with contract CBA stuff, but I was really happy to be able to see some preseason from, where I live, because I live in the East Coast. So I was up there last week. Fortunately, got to see a game. But this weekend I'm back home in Moncton, and I just can't, unfortunately, go there every weekend because I would love to. It's such a cool experience to go see those preseason games. And so if you can't get out and check them out, support the team, all that kind of stuff. But I was glad that at least we had 2 games on. Unfortunately, like I said, all the games aren't broadcasted. Some teams are really good at giving you updates on every goal that's scored, who does all that stuff. I think that's great for the league. I think that every team should be on that same social media path, especially I'm surprised Buffalo's not on it, to be honest with you, because of their diehard fan base. Maybe I'm just not following the right person. So if anybody knows a Buffalo fan that I could follow on X that posts up-to-date stuff as it's coming in, great, but I could not find it right away. So with that being said, I'm just going to run through these real quick, and we'll go over and we'll talk about each game as much as I can, right? Again, there just wasn't a lot of information out there, but I pieced together what I could for you guys. Plus, I actually ended up watching 2 of the games as well, so I'll go pretty into depth into those ones. So first off, we had Halifax versus Oshawa. Luckily, Halifax is pretty good on their social media, so I was able to kind of get some information here. Oshawa beat Halifax in overtime 8-7, and I think it was I'm pretty sure Halifax was up right till the end, and then Oshawa ended up taking over. You had Hogarth with 2 goals, Jameson with 2 goals, Knox with a goal, McLeod with a goal, Bomberry with a goal, and Hutchison with 40+ saves, and then you had Dyson Williams with 2 goals. He had the OT winner. You had Walker with a goal, Pacheco with a goal, and Taggart Clark with a goal. So that was, Halifax. This is all preseason, guys. I'm taking everything with a grain of salt right now. But you definitely get to see some performances out of certain guys. And obviously, I can't speak too much on this game because I didn't see it. But I'm excited for both these teams. Both these teams are great, and the fact that it was actually this low scoring shows that these teams are really, they're stepping up on defense this year, to be honest with you. That's an 8-7 game in overtime is pretty quick. So, and Halifax done some really 2 tight games that they've lost or tied. I think they lost this one, but I think they won the last one or something. But they've had tight games this preseason. So next we had Oshawa versus Ottawa. Ottawa beat Oshawa 11-8, and we had Riley O'Connor with a natural hat trick, Kernan with 2 goals, Sundown, Perth, Teat, and Volkov with a goal, Higgins with 49 saves, which is what I've been saying, guys. Do not sleep on Higgins this year. I've been saying this for a while. I think he's the second best goalie walking into the season. And if you were going on this weekend's performance, he was the best goalie because Del Bianco didn't have a great game, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Dyson Williams reportedly with 4 goals in that game. Dyson's going to be, I told you, I think he's going to be in the MVP contention possibly. Depends on how this goes. But this is going to be a tight league. And I honestly think both these teams, Oshawa and Ottawa, are both going to end up the playoffs this year. So, we've got Colorado and Toronto, which is the game that I actually did watch. This game was fantastic. 11-10, Colorado over Toronto. You had Andrew Q with 5 goals. You had Dylan McIntosh with a hat trick in the OT winner. You had Lee, Knock, and Woods with goal. And you had goalie tandem of 40 saves. I want to tell you right now that I didn't get the stats for him, but Nate Whittam, what a performance by that guy. That guy stole the show. Him and Q won that game for Colorado, in my opinion. Obviously, McIntosh was a little bit of a factor as well. But realistically, you fire. Like, I'm telling you right now, I was underestimating that trade when they brought him in. Whittam would look like a star that game. And I know, again, this is only preseason, don't get me wrong, but Toronto would have beat Colorado without those two for sure. Obviously, Dylan Ward, right? Like he's a beast. But Whittam, I'm telling you right now, if I was a team that was looking for a goalie like a Vegas that, maybe didn't, or even maybe Halifax, bring in one and a young goalie in, if you could get Whittam off of Colorado, which I don't know if you can, but I do think they need a little bit more depth scoring. I think Halifax, if they're looking at a goalie down the road, Whittam might be an option. Just saying. I don't know. That's just my own opinion. Nothing confirmed there. That's my own kind of looking at this. Then we had Toronto. On Toronto's side, you had Owen Hiltz with 9 points, 4 goals and 5 assists, 1 secondary assist, but still huge, guys. This kid, I was so wrong about him. And I'm already saying that it's only preseason. Don't get me wrong. But I was already so wrong about him. I was like, why the heck did they take this guy? Now, don't get me wrong. After I watched this stuff, I could understand it a little bit, but I didn't think this guy was this good. He might end up coming out as the best person in the draft. Now, don't get me wrong. CJ Kearse here, I think he had a goal. I think he had like 5 points. He had quite a few assists as well. You had Bushi with 2 goals, Rogers with 2 goals, Matthews with a goal as well. Went 13 for 18, so left 5 goals in, and Howelchuk went 31 for 37. So again, pretty good for performance by the goaltenders there. Nick Rose, I thought the goaltending on both sides was really good, to be honest with you. And I think both these teams are scary. I think Colorado, I kind of underestimated a little bit. I think Q's a lot bigger of a trade for them than they are, and we're gonna have to see how. If Dylan Ward can play. I know he does. He's gonna be just as good as Whittam, if not maybe even a little better. But I'm telling you, man, that kid's gonna be a star of the show. So hopefully, for Colorado's sake, they can hold on to him because he's pretty solid. And you never know with injuries and stuff, right? So and hopefully gets a little bit of playing time because he played really well. Anyway, that's fun. That's my take on that one. And I had a blast watching that game. To be honest with you, that was another fantastic back and forth game. Great, right? And we had Georgia and Philly, and I couldn't find any stats on these guys. Georgia won 13-9. Georgia's young, they're fast, they're big. I watched them last weekend. We're gonna see where they end up sitting, but they're starting to move up my board from where I originally had them. I'll tell you that. So Philadelphia is Philadelphia. I listened to I think they had him on Lacrosse Classified Podcast, if I'm not mistaken, last week. The GM there, and he understands he's got some pieces and stuff like that, but he also understands this is probably going to be one of those years. To be honest, is what I kind of got reading in between the lines of there. So then we had San Diego over Vancouver. They made Vancouver look human already. Del Bianco did not have a good night. I didn't have any recorded stats. I should have kept them myself during the game, I guess. I can tell you, I watched the game. And Keegan Ball was decent. All the guys were decent. They need to be better. They definitely need to be better than what they were. It is preseason, right? And Del Bianco obviously had a rough game that game. It happens. He went back in the second half. I don't think that was the original plan. I know Connor O'Toole did play for a little bit as well, but it was a rough night for Vancouver. San Diego, another one that I'm like, you know what? Did I judge these guys too much? So we'll see. Again, it's preseason. but San Diego really showed, why they were another one small to San Diego. That trade was a good pickup. They've got a couple young guys in there. They are going to get the goaltending back. He is going to be back for the beginning of the season. So, they're looking up. And again, this is going to be a very tight season. I'm going to adjust my, actual. I'm going to do my final predictions. So that's going to be one thing that I'm going to be doing. That is kind of, I already can see this. This is going to be adjusted, and it's going to be a very tight season this season. And there's going to be a lot of close games like this. So every goal matters, every game matters, and this is just great for us fans. Now, the only thing is, Las Vegas Buffalo game I couldn't find. So I looked high and low. Now, in all fairness, I wasn't all over X while it was happening, so I didn't get to see any Buffalo fans throw out there. But I put together what I could. I know it's not great, but again, it's preseason, and I guess this is better than last year, from what I understand, from what I've been told. More games on, all that kind of stuff. So we're moving in the right direction, but like, I need the teams to do a better job social media wise. Okay. We got to do a better job. If you want to grow the league, I'm trying to help you guys grow the league. I want the league to grow. I love this game. I love this sport. It's amazing, but I also need the teams to do their job and to get these social media people in to do it. Right. So you can look at Halifax for a perfect example of that. They're posting. Oshawa is doing a great job at that. Right. Toronto does a great job of that as well. Those three teams are doing their part. Where, and I'm sure, and there's a couple more in here, don't get me wrong, but where is the rest of you guys, right? This is even Vancouver. The other thing that I want to talk about, this preseason thing, okay? I was staring at a screen that said, you know, I can't remember. It said like Vancouver intermission or whatever it said on the screen. You can't tell me that. Now, maybe this has to do with the players not getting paid for these games or whatever. I don't know. But why can't you put some commercials in there, right? You're on NLL Plus. You can't tell me there's nobody that wants to be on there. No companies. Another thing is get some, and I know Brett Fruit's talking about all this, don't get me wrong. So I'm not going to, beat him up too bad on this, beat the league up on too bad on this. I know there's a lot of things going on, but we need to get more exposures. Listen to me right now, okay? You should have had Jake during intermission talking. He was already there. He was already covering the game. Why are you not having highlights shown at least? At least at the very minimum, highlights shown during that time. Cut it over. Have somebody like me just get on there. I'll do it for the exposure. I don't even care if you pay me right away. I'll do a Joe Rogan. Just put me on there until you guys are making enough money. You can throw me some shekels. I'll do it strictly for the exposure. As long as that's all I really care about. So you have guys, and I'm sure I'm not the only guy that would make an offer like that to you guys, to the league. So, and maybe I am, but I don't care. I would do it. So, have a guy like me on, have some highlights, have Jake or your broadcasting team there on, and there's lots of passionate people in here. And instead of me staring at a screen that I'm going to stare at and wait for anyway, so I'm sitting there watching it, why not have something of value on there? So that's my little rant. Again, this could be between a CBA thing. I'm not really sure. That's kind of what I heard, why they couldn't stream all the games and stuff like that. So if that's the case, then, put a bozo like me on there and let me talk for whatever. People can mute me. You know what I mean? I'll talk about the game or whoever, really realistically, whoever, as long as they know lacrosse and they can talk about the game somewhat intelligently. Down some highlights, something's got to go in there. That was just a little bit too much. I just wanted to mention that. And I felt like the Toronto broadcast was a lot more professional looking. And I think it was a bit higher up so that you could get a better look of the game. Our guest today is Lucas Argier from Lacrosse Classified, and I messaged him. And originally, how I got contact, I've talked to him for a little bit now, back and forth a little bit. And I was listening to his podcast last week, him and Jake's podcast, the Lacrosse Classified Podcast. And I was listening to the podcast, and I remember he asked, it was the Brentford podcast, and I can't remember exactly the question he asked, but there was about 3 or 4 of them that he would ask. And the way he asked questions, the way he kind of got information without coming off pushy, I just sent him a message. Hey man, I'm just like, I really enjoyed listening to you. I learned a lot off you. And he kind of responded, oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I was like, I would love to have you on the podcast. If you would ever, if that's not a conflict of interest or whatever. And luckily he was like, he wanted to go check with Jake out of respect, completely understandable. And that's the way I prefer it anyway, to be honest with you as well, just because I don't want to step on anybody's toes. But Jake was nice enough to let him come on, which I think that says a lot about Jake, to be honest with you, because he, that's his co-host, and realistically, they want to grow their podcast, all that kind of stuff. So I could understand if Jake was like, no, I don't want him to go on your podcast. That doesn't make any sense. So we were lucky. I was lucky enough to basically Jake was okay with Lucas coming on. And thank you for Jake for doing that. But also Lucas, just an amazing mind himself, to be honest with you. And you're going to hear it in this interview, but he's a really nice guy. He's knowledgeable about lacrosse, repping experience, broadcasting experience, podcast experience for his age. He's so knowledgeable and he's done so much already. So again, I'm really glad to have him on the podcast. Glad to be able to pick his brain. Glad to be able to get a little bit of tips off him. And I'm sure we'll talk lots more other than this. But let's get right into the interview. All right, today we have Lucas from Lacrosse Classified on here. How you doing today, Lucas?
Good, Jake. Yeah, I'm doing really well. Thanks for bringing me on. I'm looking forward to this, and we've been in contact past couple of days, and yeah, excited to talk some lacrosse with you for the next little while.
Yeah, man. Like I learn a lot just listening to you. When I'm listening to Lacrosse Classified, I've been listening for probably the last 6 weeks or so, and I just learn a lot from your questions. You get a lot out of different guests, and you do it in a very nice, nonchalant way, kind of. So let me just start by just telling me your background in lacrosse. How'd you get involved? All that kind of stuff.
My background comes from both my father and my godfather. Growing up in Whitby and Oshawa in Ontario in the Durham lacrosse scene, they were two that were a part of the Whitby Warriors Junior A team back in the 90s and into the early 2000s. So they were fortunate enough to win two Minto Cups together on the bench. My godfather was the assistant coach, and my dad was the therapist and trainer for the team. So they had success early on when they joined a bench together, and then a couple years later, my dad met my mom, and then they started a family, and then I came around, and so both of them then got me into it when I was born, and I've never looked back. And grew up playing Whitby minor. I'm now a referee. I've done some coaching in the past. So, but it all starts with my dad and my godfather way back when in the late '90s, winning a couple of national championships.
Okay, so do you have a preference on what you like to do? Like, do you like broadcasting the best? Do you like refereeing, or do you like playing? Like, what do you think is, or even coaching?
Ooh, if I had to pick one, probably broadcasting. That's my main focus now. It's nice to do a little bit of coaching every now and then and do some mentoring for some of the younger kids. I love reffing. It's a big part of me. Not sure what my future holds in terms of that. But broadcasting is probably my number one right now.
Okay, so let's get into that a little bit. Like, tell me what your path through journalism was and how you got to where you are kind of today.
So growing up, lacrosse and hockey were my number one and number two sports, and I, probably just like every other young Canadian kid, watching Hockey Night in Canada Saturday nights, on Sportsnet and CBC way back when. So it's just something that I've always enjoyed, and people always told me that I have a knack for talking a lot and sports. So I decided to put two and two together and go into sport media. So my education background is through Fanshawe College in London, Ontario. I did 2 years of broadcast journalism there, learned a lot about radio, general news, politics, weather, traffic, all of that, your CTV, your global news sort of thing. And then in 2024, I attended Centennial College in Toronto, and that was for sports journalism mainly. It was amazing. That was an amazing program. Great people that I've met. They've gone on to work at Sportsnet. A couple of them are at a couple like North Star Bets, a couple of companies in the States. One of them is currently an intern with the National Football League, so they're all over the place, and they're amazing. And for my internship, I went with the Toronto Rock last year, and that's kind of how I've gotten into lacrosse media. I always knew I wanted to go into the NLL. Again, I've grown up around box lacrosse my entire life, so I knew I wanted to pursue it. And thankfully, the Rock were hiring an intern at the time last year. I was able to get in with them, learn with them, spent the season with them. Not the best season the Rock had in franchise history last year, but it was great. It was a good environment, learned a lot. The players are nice and friendly, and I had a great time. And then I was fortunate enough to get picked up by Jake Elliott on Lacrosse Classified, and I've been there ever since.
Okay, cool. So to kind of break down that story for me, how you and Jake meet, how did he decide to bring you on as a co-host?
So that's it's a bit of a cool story, and I literally just had the conscious decision to answer some of his poll questions. So I want to say it was week 3 or 4 of the NLL season last year. For the fans or for the listeners that don't know, Jake Elliott is also he's the voice of the Vancouver Warriors, but he also is the voice of the Las Vegas Desert Dogs. So one weekend, Jake had a game in Vegas, and then he had a connecting flight in San Diego, I think it was, or somewhere when he was coming home. And he just went on his Twitter account and pretty much said, I have a layover in San Diego for the next couple hours. NLL fans, shoot me your questions or whatever your hot takes are. So I asked him 3 or 4 about Vegas, Vancouver. At the beginning of the season last year, Aiden Walsh was the starter. They didn't have Christian Del Bianco, so I asked him about that. Asked him about the current state of the Toronto Rock and all the injuries that they had at the time. And not long after, Jake consulted with Pat Gregoire, color analyst on NLL TSN and co-host of the OTCB podcast. And Pat kind of sung my praises, and I'm thankful for him. And then it was pretty much just a cold call that Jake sent me. And before I knew it, I was his new co-host on Lax Class. And I've never looked back, and I've had a fantastic time with it thus far.
That's amazing, man. And Jake seems like a great guy from what I can tell and everything. You guys are super knowledgeable. Like I said, I get a lot of information off you guys, so we love it there. And I know also the community obviously does too, right? Let's talk about your refereeing for a little bit. So you're aspiring referee. Like I know I was listening to the Brett Prude stuff when you were talking to him. And is that something you want to really try to get into, is professional refereeing?
Maybe one day. I'm not sure what my refereeing in terms of box lacrosse. Not sure what my refereeing path looks like right now. I wouldn't say no to reffing in the NLL one day. I know it's a really tough path to get through or to get to. But it's something that I've thought about. I don't know if that's something that I want to pursue in the future. I know many people that have. The majority of the referees in the National Lacrosse League come from Ontario, so I know them. They ref all throughout the summer. I see them referee almost every single week, and they're great people. It's a good group of officials and very knowledgeable in more ways than one. And they're the best. But I'm not sure if I want to pursue it. It's something that I've thought about, but it would be a long road ahead of me if I did want to make it to the NLL as an official.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard to mix broadcasting and refereeing just because you get I think they kind of cross over a little bit too much to try to be impartial, maybe a little bit. But okay, so tell me one thing the fans don't know about refereeing or what they could help us understand from a referee's point of view.
Ooh. Um, I think something that officials have to, or sorry, something that fans have to sort of understand or try and wrap their heads around is that lacrosse is probably one of the hardest sports to officiate. Box lacrosse is. There's so much going on, and people might say, "Oh, you only have to watch 10 players at a time." That's not the case. You are watching everything else that's going on, and I think because there's so many different moving parts, it's kind of like the National Football League. There are so many different things going on, which is why they have so many different officials on the field watching plays. You never know what might happen. And so I think something that fans might have to understand is that there might be a call or a play that occurs right in front of an official and they don't see it, but that's because they're looking across the floor and following something that just happened 3 seconds earlier. Or people are asking, why was this a crease call? Why wasn't that a crease call? Well, you have to look at the different angles and you have to trust your partners. So I wouldn't say tough or difficult, Jake. I say it's more just kind of a new thing that fans are trying to understand. Now that the NLL has gone to a 3 official mechanic system, we do try, or at least the officials try to catch all the late hits or the late holds or that, off ball slash that a defender might give to an O player. But I think it's hard and just new for fans to understand how difficult it can be watching a box lacrosse game.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fast moving and things are going to get missed. It happens in every sport. I always wonder why, with technology, why we don't honestly just have a camera following around every player almost, and then just having someone in a room kind of monitoring that, or even getting possibly AI to help monitor it as well as we go forward here. But obviously, that's something like that's way down the road.
Yeah, definitely. It's again, I don't know the status on that if that's even possible in the future with the NLL, but yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, AI is the future in every other sector, and business, politics, economics, all of that. So who knows? Maybe it could come into play with the NLL one day.
Well, I find with, there's always going to be missed calls and stuff, and then I find sometimes refs will try to make up a call down the road to kind of even it up. But if you want to play a completely fair, no missed calls, I think that's the way to go myself. But anyway, that's just my own thought process with that. I haven't heard anything about that or anything. Okay, so do you find reffing makes broadcasting easier or harder?
Well, I find that it makes it 1,000 times easier for myself when I'm able to broadcast a game and call one, and like my brain works in a very weird way. I can see things that happen before they happen. So if I'm calling a game and I'm looking at a defender again, especially if there's a mismatch, okay? Like I'll use an example. If you have Rochester versus Ottawa and you have Matt Gilray against Connor Kiernan, Matt Gilray is a 6'5", 230-pound beast, and Connor Kiernan's not the biggest guy either. He's 5'8", 5'9". So when you see a mismatch like that, like if I'm able to see that in a junior or a senior or even an NLL game and I see a mismatch like that, I know what that defender is going to do to that offensive player before he even does it. Not only because I know the offensive player's tendencies, but I know what the D guy is going to do before that O guy even gets the ball or whether they're on the off-ball slides. So I find that knowing that in my brain and looking for that helps me do play-by-play and color analyst when I'm calling a game myself.
I know you just recently started calling games, or at least lacrosse games, and you called hockey games before. So what do you prefer to broadcast, or what do you prefer to call? Do you prefer to call like hockey games or lacrosse games?
Lacrosse for sure. I always forget how quick, junior A hockey can be until I watch it live. But lacrosse, I do prefer, again, just because I'm more knowledgeable in that realm and I know what's happening. For hockey, it's different because there are so many other, I wouldn't say infractions, but there's so many other rules that you have to abide by. Like in lacrosse, a high stick is a penalty. In hockey, it can be, or it can just be a whistle. Also in hockey, you got to deal with a hand pass. So there are things like that. In lacrosse, you don't have an offside line, or icing. So there are different things about that that I'm still learning when I call hockey games, but lacrosse is definitely what I prefer right now.
Yeah, I mean, I find personally, I've been a hockey fan for 30 years, and I find lacrosse is a faster game. It just flows a little bit better too, and I love hockey. Don't get me wrong, but I do find lacrosse to be a bit faster. So okay, so what do you do for like prep before you do an interview or call a game even or anything like that? Is there anything you do?
So for an interview, I always do research on, who my interview subject is, their background, kind of the same how you asked me, what their background is, how they got in lacrosse, how long, if it's a coach, how long they've been coaching, player, same sort of thing. When I'm calling a game, though, it's a very different process. I go through the entire lineup. I look at, how long have they been with the organization? When were they drafted? What's their point totals thus far? Are they a rookie? Are they a veteran? What's their stats like over the past 2, 3, 5 years, whatever the case may be. If I'm able to, I talk to the coaches ahead of time and be like, hey, player X had this many points over the past 3 games, or the opposite. This player's kind of been on a slump over the past. What are you looking for this coming game? So it's a very different process between interviewing somebody on a podcast or every day and then preparing for a game. I write down a ton of notes when I call games, and I have a full notebook of them over lacrosse and hockey because there's so many different things that I can use on the broadcast and to, enhance the player in whatever case that may be. Another thing that has helped me is looking at transactions. Were they just traded? Were they signed? Did they get sent down and then called back up type thing? If it's the NLL, were they on the practice roster? Or were they injured? How has injury helped them or, hindered them a little bit coming off of that? So there's so many different factors that come into play when I'm preparing for a game and when I'm calling one because, again, lacrosse is so fast. and it's even faster in the broadcast booth because you want to talk about something, but then you could have a tic-tac-toe play and the ball's in the net and you're like, oh, you got to focus on that, and then you got to come back to your previous thought. So look, it's such a quick game. It's the fastest game on 2 feet for a reason. So there are so many different factors that go into it for me when I'm calling a game versus when I'm interviewing somebody on a podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, broadcasters really do make the game. They make the game exciting. They're a big part of selling the game, and that's what I think that we've been somewhat lacking in this league, has been how to sell the game. So I think that voices like you, voices like Teddy, voices like Pat, voices like Jake are great, and I think that you guys all do a fantastic job when it comes to that respect. I think we're getting there, even with the Brett Fruit and everything. I think we're getting to where we need to be in this league to become a major sport. So, okay, so what's give me some stuff that you've learned since working on Lacrosse Classified and how it's made you become a better like journalist.
I'll start with Jake Elliott. Jake has been my mentor since he brought me on, and something that I've learned from him is kind of how to settle things down a little bit. That when I first joined, I was very nervous, very timid, didn't want to say the wrong thing, sort of in a way, and Jake kind of helped me, break through that a little bit, ask the hard questions, whether it's a player, a coach, general manager, someone of an ownership group, another media person, whatever the case may be. So Jumbo has really helped me out with that. And, a couple other things that I've learned is, kind of ask the hard questions or ask something that your interview subject wouldn't expect. I think back to, NLL trade deadline last year, and Jake brought on Kurt Malosky, head coach and GM of the Vancouver Warriors. And, there were some questions that I asked him that I was pleased with, others that I know that I screwed up on, but that was a learning opportunity for me. And I still think about that episode. I even go back and listen to myself to the things that I asked and the responses that Kurt gave me, which were very valid, and it was a great learning opportunity for me. I've also learned just being on the show that A, things can change on a dime, and B, you never know what your interview subject is going to answer or what kind of answer they're going to provide. A couple episodes that I think back to are when we had the WLA commissioner on this year. We had him on at the beginning of the season and then shortly after the Man Cup. And, when we talked about the Man Cup with him, unfortunately we talked about game 3, I think it was, when the altercations occurred. And the answer that he gave us was honestly one of the best ones that I've ever heard from an interview subject. He was very open, very polite. He was blunt about it, which personally is something that I like as a journalist. There are sometimes as a journalist or as someone in the media, you ask somebody a question, you want them to give you an answer, and they kind of shy away from it. So when someone puts it bluntly, that's something that I prefer and I enjoy. So the commissioner was very respectful and polite about that. And I think it's also a good thing too that I've learned that you need to be able to adapt and think on your feet a little bit. Being able to listen to your interview subject and then provide a question based off their answer is something that is very good and something that I'm still working on. And it's it's taken me some time, but I know that I'm getting better at it. But circling back to your question, it all comes down to Jake. If Jumbo hadn't brought me on and he hadn't, and if Pat Gregoire hadn't vouched for me, and those two men, we know what they've done for the game in almost every media and journalism facet possible for the NLL. They are two of the best in the business. There's a reason why they're good at what they do. They have their own podcast. They have a great platform, and Jake and Pat are the reason that I'm here right now.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are great. They've given me a shout out as well, and same as you guys gave me a shout out as well in the last podcast, which I really appreciate. Just to be in the same name with those guys is still kind of, a little bit above my head, I think. But just circling back a little bit, when you're asking these questions, and I'm learning this skill myself, is how do you go from trying to toe that line to not trying to be disrespectful or overstep or, maybe say something you shouldn't, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's a great question. And something that I've learned is try to make it open-ended. If you want to ask I'll use an example, okay? When I want to say it was my fourth or fifth episode way back in January, maybe we're even in February now of, I guess this year still in 2025, the last NLL season. Jake asked Jamie Dalwick, GM, owner, and president of The Rock, back in February, what the current status was of the CBA negotiations, because we knew that we were going to a final year and we were going to, negotiation mode, or a year, or we were going to contract talks. So the way Jake phrased it, it was sort of something along the lines of, Jamie, what are you hearing about contracts, CBA, what's kind of going on? So when you pose a question like that, it's open-ended. You just let your interview subject take the rope and go, or take the leash and run, or what's the expression? Take the ball and run. There we go. But you just have to ask open-ended questions that allow the interview subject to provide their own answer without being, rude or disrespectful or impolite or anything like that. And also, it doesn't look bad on the interviewer when you pose a question like that, because you're not leading them anywhere. You're not guiding it. It's not close-ended. It's also not a yes-no question. It's something that they can provide as much detail or not as they want based on the question that was asked. So I think if you're able to ask short, open-ended questions, that can really help you. That can really help you, ask the hard questions if need be.
No, that's great advice, man. I really appreciate that because, that's one of the things that I'm always trying to, because at the end of the day, you always want to try to be respectful and only let people talk about what they're comfortable with. But you also, as a journalist or as somebody trying to get information, you also want to ask those questions to try to give the fans kind of the information that I think a lot of people are looking for. So great answer. So anyway, so let's move on to like the Philadelphia situation. Now, obviously, this is quite a messy situation. Just kind of give me your thoughts about the whole Mitch DeSnoo and, kind of what you think is going to end up happening maybe.
All right, so the first part of your question, what are my thoughts on it? I think my thoughts are this. He was offered the franchise tag. No CBA had been established yet, had been agreed upon or ratified. So I think, the grievance filed by the NLLPA is valid. I don't know what's going to come out of it, but I do think that it's valid. I think that it's reasonable. Obviously, when Paul Day, general manager of the Wings, was on Lacrosse Classified last week, he gave his thoughts on it, which, again, are valid too from general manager's point of view. So, again, I think it's valid. It's reasonable. I don't think it's I think it's necessary. We understand DeSnoo's position right now work-wise and also life with his occupation. So, travel to Philadelphia week in, week out is, probably not the most ideal for him. What do I think is going to happen? Currently he's on Philadelphia's holdout list for training camp. I think it's going to stay that way. I don't see a world where he would join the team in any capacity. I think, unfortunately, they'll end up releasing him. If he does end up become Philadelphia's property, they'll try and trade for him, get something out of it. They don't really want to lose him for nothing. But I think right now it's just a case of, let the league, let the NLLPA handle it. I'm not going to comment any further on that. I just think it's going to be an interesting situation and one to watch for sure, as, DeSnoo is one of the top defenders in the league.
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate everything you just said there. And all I'm going to say is basically that I think that DeSnoo, it's understandable to why he wanted to stay in Toronto going through his medical degree. And at the end of the day, this isn't a full-time job for them yet. I'm hoping that's where we're heading towards. And I think at that point, we could be maybe talking about a little bit of a different situation. But with the reality of the way everything is, I think it's just more realistic for him to play maybe in Toronto or Oshawa, but that's just my opinion. Right, so let's go right into like some player stuff. So I did kind of like my top 10 point who I think was going to get in the point leaders this season. It was obviously a lot of those guys like Teat, Smith, Burns are always going to be up at the top of the list. One guy that I personally think is going to have a really breakout season this season is Josh Dawick. Just with the young guys around him, I think he's going to slip in that top 10. But there's a lot of guys, top 15 could easily be in that top 10. So who are your top 10, or who do you think that would surprise people to be in there anyway?
Everybody says that age is just a number. and I think that Wes Berg has shown that time in, time out. He had a great season last year with San Diego. Pretty sure he was their top point scorer. He just continues to amaze me, and the Rock and San Diego only played each other once last season, but I watched him that entire game, and him playing on that right side with Rob Hellier was just phenomenal and just a spectacle to watch. So I wouldn't count out Wes Berg at all. He's been around the league for many years. Had a great career, collegiate career down in Denver. I wouldn't count out Wes down in San Diego. Someone else that might surprise people, and he's only entering his second year in the league, but don't count him out. Dyson Williams with the Oshawa Firewolves. He had I want to say he had close to 70 points last year in his rookie year. He had 26 goals last year. I wouldn't be surprised if he cracked 30 or 35 this year. And I think playing, he's in his hometown, he's in Oshawa, he's in the Durham region. Oshawa has, I think they're the youngest or the second youngest age-wise team in the league. So playing with all that youth around him, and him being their number one lefty, or number two, I guess, with Ethan Walker, if you want to throw him in there. I think Williams is going to surprise a lot of people this year.
Yeah, it's funny. I have him at 10 and 9. I kind of have him and Alex Simmons together, and I think they're going to be just a dynamic duo. Ty Kurt's right in there as well. Like, there's a lot of these guys that are in that conversation that could be in there, but it's so tight in this league. Berg, I think that if he gets in there, I think that he's going to be looking at an MVP, kind of, in that conversation as well. So we'll see what happens. So, all right. So who are you kind of high on this year too, for team wise? And then who do you think maybe not going to do as good as other people think they are?
Ooh, I love this question. He's had a great training camp so far, and I've been watching him every weekend with the Firewolves, and that's Jackson Fridge. This guy out of Burnaby, WLA Lakers. Oh man, he is something special. I watched him last night at our exhibition game when we played Halifax, and he was all over the floor, played on the man down a couple of times on the PK unit, loved to run the ball in transition. He's kind of that grit player. If there's a loose ball in the corner, he's after it. He's just a dog on a bone type player. So I'm pretty high on Fridge. Someone else that I'm looking forward to, if he's able to crack the lineup, which I hope he is Noah Manning out in Calgary. He had a couple good preseason games last weekend, against Buffalo. He had a good game, so I'm pretty high on him. A sleeper that I think fans should keep their eye on is Nolan Byrne down with the Georgia Swarm. Now that Georgia has traded away Andrew Q, and there's a big hole on their left side on offense, I think Byrne can step into it, and he's just the type of player that he has he's a pretty tall guy. He's around 6'1", 6'2"-ish, and he's got a pretty quick first step. So if he's able to use that effectively and get underneath his defenders, he played at Lafayette College before he renounced his NCAA eligibility, so he knows how to switch hands. He's from the Ottawa region, and I think that if he's able to showcase all the tools in his arsenal, he could be a really good rookie down for the Swarm and the rest of their young guys. Ben Trumbull as well. He's not going to do much in the points department. On defense, he's just a menace. I watched him play this past year with the MSL Lakers in Peterborough, and this kid just loves to hit. He's a big guy. So Byrne definitely is a sleeper, and then just the rest of those Georgia rookies. They're going to be a team to watch over the next couple of years.
Yeah, so I mean, Fridge, I actually was surprised how far he fell in the draft. He was definitely higher on my list. And Georgia, I was lucky enough to see them at the ILA last weekend, and that's what I said, they were big and strong, all that kind of stuff. So I think Georgia is going to be, they're going to be young this year, I would say. So, okay, so let's move into sixes here. And I just want to get your thoughts on sixes, because I've talked to guys that love it. I've talked to guys that hate it. I'm somewhere in the middle. I think that there needs to be tweaks, and it could be amazing. But what are your thoughts in general?
Women's sixes is better than men's. I'll say that. I know many other people that agree with me in that statement. Being that most of the male players come from a field lacrosse background where, you have long poles, you can slash somebody on the arm, back, whatever the case may be, they're used to that. So going to a, facet of the game that's non-contact, doesn't have a lot of, doesn't have too much of pick setting or, body contact. It's definitely different for them. For the women, though, they're used to this. They play with no contact in women's field. They're used to field across sticks, goggles, something like that. But for women's sixes, they actually feel like they can play because for women's field lacrosse, 10v10, there's a lot of start and stopping. There's a lot of, delayed penalties and stoppages in play. So when it's sixes, they actually feel like they can play and there's some flow and fluidity to it. For the men's, it's different. They're still adapting to it. They're trying to make it play like box lacrosse, maybe use the X position behind the net a little bit and try and find that hybrid involving the field game, but it's tough for them. From refereeing it, women's sixes is way better to officiate than men's because not to say that men's sixes they don't know what they're doing, so to speak, but the women they actually get it, there's no cross checking, no pushes, very little stick contact. They get that. For the guys, they want to go lay a body, they want to slash somebody, but they know they can't do that, so they're still adjusting. But watching it, it's better to watch women's sixes than men's. If you want high scoring, though, I'd say, go watch men's because they like to shoot the ball more. Not to say the women don't shoot the ball, they do. Just the guys do it more. They, they're used to the underarm and the sidearm whips, and they just gun it all that they want. I think there are some tweaks that need to be made. I know there's a couple that I'd put in if I was able to, but again, people at World Lacrosse, they're way more knowledgeable than me, so I let them handle that. And talking with other officials, they know that it's close to being finalized and making it as transparent between the men's and women's games as they can. And it's gonna be fun when it's on the Olympic stage in less than 3 years' time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on anything that's going to grow the game, so that's why I'm on the side that I do like it. I just do think as a fan, and I have an interesting perspective because I come from a completely fan point. I've never played all that kind of stuff, so I understand why they did this because I find field, especially now, I find now that I'm into lacrosse, I can watch field and enjoy it, but at first it's hard to jump in as a fan. But with the sixes, it's so fast, and there's no names on the back of the jerseys or pennies, whatever you want to call it. And I think they could add that in, even if they did it on, digitally or something, just to kind of sell those stars, sell the game, all that stuff. The face or the continuous play, I think it's a little bit fast. I think even just having a face off after every goal, or even just bringing it behind the net. I think that was also another thing that I've heard that's been brought up. So again, I think it's right there, but I just think if they just tweaked it just a little bit, it would just make it that much better.
Yeah, definitely. I also think that for the game to continue to grow, you have to have it at the grassroots level. And I know that there are some, I'll use Canada as an example. There are some provinces that have developed a sixes league and a program, and they're starting to build it. I know others that are a little bit behind, and I know that they're trying to catch up. But I think that in order to grow the game more, both the provinces, the member associations, and even down in the states, it needs to happen at the grassroots levels and introduce it to the kids at a young age so they start to buy into it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, Teddy and Greg there or Pat were going on about they were saying how if they were going to do an all-star game, maybe do it like, a game of sixes, a game of box, and a game of field. And I honestly thought that was kind of an interesting thing. I know there's a lot of different people against, or I've heard the side of the argument why we don't have an all-star game, but I think for the growth of the game, it would be a cool thing to.
Yeah, I think it would be too. I'm not really sure how you could organize that or play it, but I think that would be, something that the fans would get out of it, and who knows, maybe the players would enjoy it too.
Yeah, I think the only way to do it is like the NHL's got it done where they did the Four Nations, so something like in that sense is the only way to give your kind of purpose for playing those games. So anyway, okay, so I'm just gonna ask you a couple kind of advice for me. So, what advice would you be giving me starting off as a podcaster, as trying to get into, I would love to call games maybe one day, stuff like that.
Wow. Not sure I'm the right person to ask, man, but I do appreciate the question. Just some basic journalism and media advice that I've given is listen more than you speak. Um, if you're able to, be a sponge and absorb everything that you're hearing, that you're seeing more than you speak or that you talk, I think that can help you, and that goes a long way. If you're able to, just open your eyes and ears more than your mouth, that can go a long way with your career in terms of calling games. I know that Junior B and Tier 1 and Tier 2 isn't the biggest out in the East for you, but I mean, I'd reach out to teams, reach out to New Brunswick Lacrosse, whatever the case may be. I wouldn't say you'd have to go out to Nova Scotia maybe, but I do know that it's bigger out there a little bit, but who knows? And again, if an opportunity comes your way, say yes. Never be the person to say no or to be closed-minded. Just let the chips fall wherever that may be. You never know who's going to come knocking or who's going to slide into your DMs. If Jake Elliott hadn't slid into mine and asked me and cold called me, I never would have gotten on Lax Class with him. I never would have been able to call a President's Cup. So it was just a bit of a luck of the draw for myself, but you never know who's watching. You never know who's listening. You never know which guest you bring onto your show every week here with Anything Lax, and who's gonna catch your eye, or whose eye you're gonna catch, or who's gonna perk up when they hear something on your show. So just keep an open mind, eyes and ears open more than your mouth, and just have fun with it, because that's what I've done from the minute that I've gotten into this. And if I continue to have fun, which I assume that I will, and I hope to, and I'm loving it so far, you never know where you might end up one day.
Yeah, man, that's great advice. I'm already talking to the a couple of those guys in Moncton. We're lucky. We're putting a bid in for a junior B team, so I'll be involved in kind of just getting in there with that. There's a big missing link in the East Coast. I was talking to the president of the Kodiak local association here, and I asked him where junior A guys go after, they're kind of done here, and there really isn't much. I know there is some guys from the East Coast that have gone on and played in the NLL, but it's very few and far between. And there is a lot of talent down here, so I'm hoping to just kind of be able to make those connections, and kind of create that missing link that's here essentially. So, is there anything else that you wish you knew earlier, or you could tell yourself going back?
Wow. If I were to look back on myself, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and give my younger self a piece of advice, it would be, don't burn any bridges with people. Always keep those relationships and those point of contacts open. And I'd say that the more you know, again, there are many different kinds of journalism and media, whatever the case may be. But the more that you know about current events of what's going on in the news, politics, business, economics, crime and emergency services, whatever the case may be, medical and health and science, whatever's going on, the more you know about current events going on, whether it's in your community, your home province, your country, worldwide, whatever scale you want to look at, the more you know about that will open more doors for you. Because when you go into, whether it's sports journalism, business, or, you have a podcast about science and what's going on in outer space, or whatever the case may be, whenever you go down a certain path, sometimes people tend to put the blinders on and don't focus on everything else going on around them. But if you're able to, keep up to date with what's going on, it doesn't even have to be on a daily basis, but, if you, check the latest headlines on what's going on in global news, or, CTV Moncton, or whatever the case may be for that certain week, that will help you become a better journalist, more knowledgeable in life. And I think it's also something that I wish I would have done, when I was going through school, because looking back on it, I know that there's more that I could have done in politics or business or whatever the case may be. And I think that would have helped me become a much more well-rounded journalist right now.
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep up on all that stuff myself. I do find trying to do content for politics is soul sucking though, so that's why I love being in sports, because it's something positive to talk about most of the time anyway, and that's why I love it here. So, Okay, so give me some guys you listen to, like some podcasts, or when you go on X to look at news for lacrosse. Who's some of the stuff that you're listening to?
We'll start with the Anything Lack show. I know the guy, and he's pretty good at what he does. So
Thanks, man.
that's definitely
I appreciate
one.
that.
Off the Crossbar podcast with Teddy and Pat is one that I listen to on a daily basis, or weekly basis, I should say, when they drop new episodes. Brad Chaloner and the Coach's Call. That's always a good one. I haven't listened to their new episode yet with Mitch Jones, but I know Loose Mesh is a new one that's out there with Dawson Nielsen and Steve Toll and Elliot Frickman, Connor Ryan McMichael. So I will be listening into them. I hope they're back. I've been told they're back for a new season, but NLL Box Out with Mackie and Coop. That's a good, superficial intro to the NLL podcast. So there's many different, forms or ways that I consume content. I also look at what's going on down in the States. Dan Arestia is a good guy. He's always got some good takes. Every now and then I watch and listen to Daily Dive with Michael Carvelis. So there's many different people doing many different things. And it's always good when, there's other, forms and, people doing their own thing to help grow the game. And I think it's good that, whatever you call it now, Twitter X, whatever the case may be. But, there's always something new going on there. Teams are getting more into the social media side of things. When you look at it, Twitter's been around for, I think it's 20 years now, maybe almost 25, but, it's still in its infancy a little bit. And I know teams are getting into, TikToks, Reels, more fan interactions, which is nice to see. So it's a good way to consume content that way. But, in terms of podcasts, the names that I just mentioned, and, another way that I consume content is, I'm also a bit of a contributor for the NLL.com. So whenever there's a new article on their website, I go and read it. I know recently John Rappaport released a new one on, all the late round draft picks this year that are making an impact. He also posted one not too long ago about the landscape of San Diego lacrosse. So it's always a good way to consume content that way of what's going on, outside of the NLL, and then what the NLL specifically is focusing on within their own closed offices.
Yeah, and I do like the NLL site. I think it needs to be updated more often, though. It needs to be up to date. I use NLLstats.com because of that, because the stats just aren't there. I know they're working on some stuff, so I'm sure maybe that's why they just haven't been as up to date. The app's coming from what I hear and all that stuff. So, well, I think we're moving in the right direction, but definitely, they do definitely have some great info out there on that their official site. So, okay, so where do you think like lacrosse media is headed now? Like, do you think it's going to be more guys like me, or do you think it's going to be more of these, guys straight out of school, kind of like that way?
I think it's going to be both. I think it's going to be guys such as yourself, Jake. I think it's going to be people that, watched it and they like it. So they're going to start their own show or own podcast or their own, site, whatever the case may be. I do think it's going to be a lot of that. I know people, I know that it's coming with people coming out of college and university, such as myself. I know that, there's a lot of players that are playing, intermediate right now or junior C or even junior B lacrosse that, their time is almost up and they don't really have aspirations of playing senior. So they either want to coach or they want to do media, whatever the case may be. But I also think that a big one that is coming, and, Mackie Jen is the perfect example, is more females. I do think that we're on the right track now for getting more females and getting more women in media, in front of the camera, on a headset, on the mic. I do know that that's coming. We have more females now being hired by the NLL for officials. I think we're now up to 4 or 5 on the roster. Don't fact check me on that. But I do believe that is the number that we're at now. So I know that's growing on the officiating side. I know more women are getting involved, in front office and in, corporate partnerships and sponsorship roles within franchises and in teams. But in media, I know that it's coming. I know more teams are hiring, females as their communication managers. And I know that we're on the right trajectory to get more women involved in our sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big thing for right across the board, because even in my local association, they're doing that stuff. They're trying to really push like women's lacrosse. It's growing a lot. It's actually probably the fastest growing thing that's been going on, at least locally for me. And I think that Mackie does a great job. Love to have her on a show one day. And I think that, as long as I'm good for anybody being in there, as long as they're good at their job. That's really, I don't care if you're a guy, a girl, anybody. As long as they're great at their job, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, it does. And I know that many people are, they're eager to get their foot in the door. They want to, help out and grow the sport. And I know that, one day soon it's coming.
Yeah, no, this sport's growing even by just the numbers that are released and stuff that I've seen. I mean, I've done videos on them, and we're definitely moving in the right direction. So, okay, so give me some bold predictions, or at least one bold prediction for this NLL season.
One bold prediction this year. A Canadian team is winning the National Lacrosse League Championship. I know Buffalo had their three-peat. They went on a run. They were the favorites in those 3 years, but I do think a Canadian team is going to win it this year. I'm not sure who that is exactly, but I do think it's going to come north of the border this year. Another one that I'm going to say, and I know a lot of people are high on them right now, Las Vegas makes the playoffs.
I'm definitely with you on that one, man.
With the free agent signings that they made, and a couple other deals that they made, and bringing in a bit of a new coaching staff. I know Sean Williams is bringing in a new defensive coordinator, I believe. I don't know if he has a new offensive one, but I think he has a new D guy. So I think bringing in that will help. And I know that they're going to be a dark horse. Many people aren't still, they're still not high on them after their previous records in the league, but I think this year it's going to be different down there in Vegas.
Yeah, I agree. As long as they can get their goaltending situation handled, I think they'll be fantastic. And I think with all the extra offensive push, and as long as Jack Hanna goes back there as well, I think that they're just going to be an unstoppable force. And probably, I right now I look at them very similar to Rochester. Give me your MVP pick for the season.
Ooh, good question. The MVP of the league this year, and some people may not agree with this, but it is what it is. MVP this year is Cody Jamieson. I think I think a jammer out in Halifax. He's their number one lefty. He's a big guy. People know what to expect of him. I think that if he's able to, take his game, step it up a little bit from last year, add a couple more goals, be a little bit more of a playmaker, I think that he's going to help that Thunderbirds team absolutely, be even, they finished third last year in the league standings. They could be number 2 or maybe even number 1 if Cody, steps up his game a little bit more. Watched him last night in preseason. He hasn't missed a beat at all. So I think Jamieson could be this year's league MVP.
I mean, I could definitely see that. I think Halifax is a great team. I know it's funny because either you love Halifax or you're kind of down on Halifax this year. I find from what's going around, I'm on I have them ranked at 2 right now. I'm gonna redo everything, go over a finalized version of that before the season actually starts. But I'm personally for Halifax being at that top, the top 3-4 teams for sure. Where do you sit them?
I'll put Halifax right now at number 3. I will. I do think. I mean, it's easy. It's easy to say that Buffalo will be the number 1 team again. It's easy to say that. Same with Saskatchewan, based off their performances last year, meeting the NLL finals. I mean, I wouldn't say Warren Hill had a bad season last year. I wouldn't say that at all. But I do think that coming off winning another Mann Cup this past summer with Six Nations, I think he's ready. I think he now has a good idea and a good shot of where Halifax is going, and the trajectory that they're on. They're entering, I think it's their 5th year entering in Halifax. So I think, based on whatever their 5-10 year plan is in Halifax in terms of winning a championship, whatever the case may be, I think they are on the right trajectory, or at least I hope they are. They hosted their first playoff game or home playoff game in Halifax Thunderbirds franchise history last year, and then they went to the second round, then ultimately lost to Saskatchewan. So I want to say they're on the right path. They made the next step. I think now for them it's making an NLL finals. They made it to the playoffs, hosted a playoff game at home, made it to round 2. I think next up for them is NLL finals and hopefully an NLL championship.
Yeah, I think they're kind of in their win now window, which is why I think you could see them maybe make a blockbuster trade this year. If I had to guess, I could see it like Lyle Thompson ending up there, depending on how Georgia pans out this season. We'll have to see how that all goes. They're so young; they could end up. That's the thing about this league; it's so evenly matched. They could end up being one of the top teams, right? Halifax definitely needs to. I think they're in their window now, so I think it's kind of time to win now. And they have, I think, 3 first-round picks this next draft, and it's a deep draft. And I think those picks are going to be super, super valuable.
Yeah, definitely. It's Kurt Stiers has done a great job out there in Halifax. So is head coach Micah Kersey. You got Andrew Suter, Joe Catalano, everybody out there, that their whole group. And I think that if they're able to, it's all about, it's so hard in this league. We love watching it, but we know that so many people get injured night in and night out. So if they don't get bit by the injury bug, if they stay healthy and they're able to do what they do and, slow the pace down a little bit, they're very good at working the 2-man side. They're very good at working the 2-man game, especially because they like to run, 3 righties, because they love to do that. If they're able to have those lefties just work and, the righties kind of float, I think that they're able to make some waves this year in the league, and who knows, if they might be the number 1 team, who the heck knows?
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I think Hill's the X factor there. I think that I personally think he's going to have a bounce back year. I've been saying that for a little while. He was going through some personal stuff last year, obviously, and I think now that he's going to come back clear-headed, Man Cup champion again, I think it just gives him everything that he needs to go and have. Even if he hits like 78, 79% save percentage, I think that's going to be enough to really give him that push.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so just one last question for you, man. I appreciate it took all this time off you. If you could pick one guy that you get to broadcast with or you get to do a show with that you haven't got to be a part of yet, who would it be?
Ooh. If I had the pick of calling any game with anybody, I'd say Jake Elliott, but I already got that dream this past summer when he and I got to do a President's Cup game together, which was amazing. First time, obviously, he and I got to call a game together, which was fun. But if I had to pick anybody, there would be 2 people. Pat Gregoire. I think it'd be fun to call one with Pat. And, I mentioned her a couple minutes ago in my answer, but Mackie. I think being in a booth with Mackie would be a lot of fun. She's very knowledgeable. She's great for the sport. She does a ton in the landscape of Nova Scotia lacrosse, and on the women's side, she coaches a team down there. I think working with Mackie would be a lot of fun, and I think that she is probably, the next closest to, being hired by a team as their full-time broadcaster.
Yeah, man, I agree. I would love to have her on the show or even just, have a couple minutes with her. She's very knowledgeable and she's exactly what we need in this sport. So as far as that, man, I really appreciate you being on. Thanks for coming. And, all the stuff you gave me all the time. We almost had an hour here. So I really appreciate you giving me that.
Appreciate it, Jake. It was awesome, man. And you've done a great job so far with the Anything Lax show. I know it's only gonna, continue to grow, and you're already doing amazing things. So keep at it, and appreciate the time, man. Thanks.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. We'll talk soon. So what a great interview by Lucas. Absolute pleasure to have on the podcast. It's really surreal to be able to actually get these guys to come on, to be honest with you still, because it's funny how the lacrosse community is. If I can tell anybody anything, get on, try to start doing content. You have to show consistency for anybody to take you seriously. But if you show a little consistency and you show you have passion for this, you can do this as well. I'm telling you right now. It's all possible. Trust me, if I can do it, you can do it. So again, thanks for having Lucas on. Great interview. A lot of useful information there. And just nice to talk to him. I'm sure I'll do it again. Like I said, he's a fantastic person. And I hope when I do get to Ontario again, maybe we could sit down and have something to eat, just, talk lacrosse. Because I'm telling you, I could talk lacrosse all day. Just talk to him for almost an hour. Thank you for giving me that much time, by the way. That was a lot of time. I know that. And it's just I could talk to him for another hour, to be honest with you. So we already touched on the Mitch Disnew situation. Personally, what I think is going to happen, very similar to him, I just see him either playing in Oshawa or Toronto. This is the issue with everything that goes on right now. With this not being a full-time gig, it's hard to make somebody commit to this like a full-time gig. And Mitch Disnew's a doctor, or going to be a doctor, a research doctor, and you can't. There's certain things that are just, right now he's trying to juggle two things. So we're lucky. I would love to have half as much talent as that guy to be able to be also as smart as to become a doctor, a research doctor, but also on top of that, be able to play at the highest level of box cross, and not only play at the highest level, but be one of the best defensemen in the league. Hats off to that guy. And, if we get to see him play this year, I hope we do. You just have to treat it like it's a privilege. So we won't get back too much into that now. But yeah, unfortunately, Philly's going to lose out on that. And I don't really, again, this is why I don't agree with trading first round picks for rental players, because it usually doesn't work out. All right, so I want to do a little bit of predictions, and this kind of is going to piggyback off the TSM boys there, Pat and Teddy, a little bit. I think the writing's somewhat on the wall, so it's hard to not, take these things, but they made kind of a bold prediction, and this is kind of something I can really see, or they touched on this. I don't know if they've really, I think they did basically predict this, but, Lyle Thompson, they were talking more about the end of the season, moving him. More so, I think that he's going to be moved by the deadline if Georgia isn't in the position they want to be in. If they're going for a playoff push, they're going for, a chance to, play in the playoffs. I don't think that he's going to get traded. But if Georgia does do kind of mediocre or miss, they know they're going to miss the playoffs. Lyle's a free agent after this season anyway. Whether he wants to stay in Georgia or not, I don't know. It seems like they're kind of, trying to get younger there. So I think what really makes sense is obviously three teams. Makes sense: Halifax, Buffalo, and Rochester, right? And I think with Halifax, I think that makes no sense for an actual trade destination before the end of the season. Maybe Rochester as well, to be honest with you, if it's going to be one of those teams. Buffalo, throwing out what they can as well. Think about what I say about Halifax is I think it being the most likely landing destination for him this year is because they have the first round picks that they have 3 first round picks in the next year's draft. Those things are like gold because of how deep it is. And if they want to win now, they're in that win now mode. Go for it, hurrah. You might have to give up something. So they have a lot of talent on that side. So they could move a piece. So they could give a young piece away, also as well as a first for next year's draft to get Lyle. Who knows? Whether Hill will be doing well, maybe you package something, but I think that's going to be kind of where you see it and really give Halifax that push. Like I said, I believe in Warren Hill. But if he doesn't perform this first half of the season, I think they are going to be shopping for a goaltender. So we'll talk about that more as the time goes on. Depending on how Georgia's doing, where they want to go, maybe you see a package deal with Lyle Thompson and Brett Dobson. But that'd be a big return, big return. So, but you never know. Georgia does look like they want to get younger. They do they're at that point. I think if they don't do it this year, they know the writing's on the wall. Lyle's probably going to move on to somewhere else, I think, next year. And, I could be wrong about that, but I just kind of get that feeling with him. I think that Halifax just makes a lot of sense for him. Maybe Rochester. And then, like I said, Buffalo obviously is, all the ties in that there as well. And they're always going to be competitive. I think it's kind of special to be able to wear a Buffalo Bandits jersey because of all the great players that have played there. You also get to be coached by John Tavares, so not half bad. And they treat the guys really well there as well. So see what Lyle wants to do. Obviously, he's got this season to play still out on his contract, but I do see if Georgia's not in the play position, I could see Halifax as him sliding in there. And Stiers wants the trophy, he wants a championship, and I think Halifax is right in that window. I know I'm kind of high on Halifax. I think a little bit, but I do believe in them. I think they have a great defensive core. I think they have, like I said, I think Warren Hill's gonna have a bounce back year. Even the backup goalie, he had a decent game and I also think that they have one of the best offenses overall. Like their offense can go up against almost anybody. So I think with that combination, I think they're a really dangerous team, and they got a couple guys in there that are gritty, and they're gonna hit you when you come into their zone. So they're not a soft team to play against. They've got a lot of talent on that team and big. So, and they're veterans. I think they're ready to win. If to be honest with you, I mean, again, I'm in Moncton a little biased. I don't have a team yet, technically. But I do always love Halifax. I love their swagger. I got a jersey on the wall right now, as you can see. But I do really like Halifax, and I do just think they're that good. I really do. They're primed, and they need a championship because as much as they have all Rochester stuff, it'd be nice to see them get their own kind of legacy. Yeah, those are my thoughts on that. So that's pretty much it, guys. Really, preseason's going on. We're gonna be talking. I'm sure we're gonna see a lot more cuts coming up this week. We've got some more games next week. We've got camps getting into the later weeks here. What's the date today? So we're the 16th, right? So we're not that far away. 12 days away from the opening season, something like that. So we're right there, and I'm super pumped. I can't wait to get this going. Preseason, the way it's been so far has been fantastic. Close games, and I think it's gonna be one of these seasons. It's gonna be really, really close. The season's gonna be close this season. It's gonna be a lot of that. The teams are gonna be fighting to get in that playoffs. You're gonna see some good teams that miss the playoffs this year. I truly do believe that. And Vancouver, after this weekend, are they human? I just think it's kind of a little bit of, like I said, trying to learn how to play with each other. A lot of big guys, a lot of big names, and I think they'll be better. I'm not too worried about Vancouver. I'm not too worried about any of these teams yet. Preseason doesn't really tell me much, so we'll go from there. It is just nice to see the guys get out there, start playing, and you do usually see some standouts like Hiltz. Like, look at Hiltz. Hiltz, man, shout out to that guy, dude. I was so wrong. I didn't understand why Toronto took him at the time. That's why there's scouts out there, and I'm not a scout. So once I did see him play more, though, I will say I can see why they picked him. And obviously, now there's no question. But man, he's gonna be fantastic. He's gonna be fantastic. I mean, he got to play against Colorado, which is Saris, which is the guy I thought might go there. So we'll see what happens, guys. But this is gonna be an exciting season, and I'm pumped. Other than that, I just want to again say thank you to Lucas for jumping on here. Really, really, he didn't have to do that, and I really appreciate that he did. I love talking lacrosse with anybody who knows what they're talking about. So, guys a lot more knowledgeable than me, so I learned a lot, and I think I entertained them for an hour. So that's good enough for me. Remember, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've got the jersey giveaway, so get into Discord. Just go follow. You can DM me if you can't find the Discord link. It's out there. I think I've got it posted on most things. If you can't find it, DM me. I'll get it. I'll get you a Discord. We got the fantasy league coming out this week. I'll get that. I'll get all the details. We'll probably be drafting somewhere early next week or something, I'm assuming. And then just, we'll be back for another episode. Go follow the socials. Anything Lacrosse Show on most things. Anything Lacrosse on my OG TikTok. I go live during Leaf games. I go live for all the NLL games that I can. And as this goes on and the season starts, we're going to be going live a lot more. So check them out. I have in the Discord, there's a live thing that I always post my lives into. Follow me on X, all that kind of stuff, right? So anyway, without that being said, my name is Jacob McDonald. I'm Anything Lacrosse, and this is the game that never sits still. You guys have a good night, and we'll talk soon.